Thank you, Senator. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. When you were last testifying before this committee, you and I talked about water in South Texas, and we talked about the 1944 Water Treaty. As you know well, South Texas has, for the last 4 years, faced a severe drought, and that drought has been substantially exacerbated by the conduct of the government of Mexico, and in particular, its repeated and flagrant violations of the 1944 Water Treaty. Under that treaty, Mexico is obligated to provide 350,000 acre-feet of water each year to South Texas. Mexico was breaking that treaty, and there were 1.3 million acre-feet of water in arrears. As a consequence, South Texas is facing a massive drought. South Texas farmers are putting out of production up to half their acreage. They're laying off workers. Last year, the only sugar mill in the state of Texas closed because sugar farmers could not get the water to grow their crop. And you committed at that hearing to work with me and assist in pressuring Mexico to comply with that treaty. In the months since then, you have followed through on that commitment. You have leaned in vigorously with the government of Mexico. Your deputy, Chris Landau, has done the same thing. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has done the same thing. And then critically, President Trump put out a public statement on Truth Social, making clear to Mexico that there would be serious consequences, sanctions and tariffs if they did not comply with the water treaty. I will say, as a result of the president's leadership and your hard work, we've had a major victory for South Texas, and Mexico has committed to providing 400,000 acre-feet of water, which is desperately needed. So I want to just start by saying thank you. In 4 years under Joe Biden, the Biden administration would not lift a finger for Texans, for farmers in South Texas, to hold Mexico to account, and the Trump administration has done more in 4 months fighting for water in South Texas than Joe Biden did for 4 years. So I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to ask how the State Department is approaching next steps on the 1944 Water Treaty.
Well, first of all,
what's up, fellow patriots? Welcome back to the channel where truth matters, freedom reigns, and America comes first. I just finished watching the latest video, where Senators Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio laid it out plain and simple, and let me tell you, folks, this is exactly what we've been saying for years. Our nation is under attack, yes, from foreign enemies, but more dangerously, from weak leadership right here at home. Let's start with what Senator Cruz had to say about the water crisis in South Texas. For 4 years, farmers, hardworking American families have been suffering through a brutal drought. Now, according to a treaty signed in 1944, Mexico must deliver 350,000 acre-feet of water a year to Texas. Did they do it? Of course not. They broke that treaty and built up a 1.3 million acre-feet water debt. That's not just negligence, that's an attack on our agriculture, on our economy, on our people. And what did the Biden administration do about it? Nothing. Not one finger lifted. But Trump? Trump steps in and bam. Mexico finally agrees to release 400,000 acre-feet. That's real leadership. Folks, that's what happens when America negotiates from a position of strength, not weakness.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that that commitment is met, and then we have to begin to prepare for the next cycle. This is a one-year problem. So we want to continue to work on that to make sure that those commitments are made, and that then in the next cycle, this becomes made permanent. That in essence, this becomes the new standard operating procedure and not a one-off. And by the way, it has to be something that exists beyond the presidency of the current president, because if the next president doesn't prioritize it, it could go back. So I just think this continued engagement with them on our expectations. The truth of the matter is, and in fairness, the Mexican government has grown increasingly cooperative on a number of fronts, both on national security issues and common security issues, but also on issues such as this. We're also happy, I think there's also the new treatment plant that they've opened, the Tijuana wastewater one, that we think will also be very helpful to water issues in the region and also the water quality issues. But this was a good news story. I think it's what happens when you make something a priority and then follow through on it. But we have to sustain it, and that really is our focus now, to sustain this through for future cycles, not just the short term.
So, and I'll tell you, earlier this year, I went down to the Rio Grande Valley with Secretary Rollins. And in December, I wrote a provision in the continuing resolution that provided emergency relief to South Texas farmers, $280 million. And Secretary Rollins came down. Now, Brooke is the first Texan ever to be the U.S. Agriculture Secretary, and she's the first Ag Secretary in history to go to the Rio Grande Valley. And Secretary Rollins and I did a roundtable, and I will say, you and I have both been very focused on the Hispanic community in particular. I will say the impact in the Rio Grande Valley of having a president and an administration that is fighting for them is enormously consequential. And so I was very grateful that she came down, and the farmers and ranchers in South Texas see that they've got a president and an administration that's fighting for them. Let me shift to a different topic. Today, South African President Ramaphosa is in Washington, D.C. He'll be meeting with President Trump tomorrow. You and the president, as well as other administration officials, have repeatedly and rightly criticized South African policies on issues ranging from human rights to activities that directly undermine American national security. Those activities, in turn, include what appears to be an explicit and extensive pivot away from the United States and towards the Chinese Communist Party. There are also serious and credible allegations that the South African government's decision-making is compromised by widespread corruption tied directly to Iran. They are working together to target our Israeli allies on the international stage. President Ramaphosa himself has taken an aggressive position, leading a charge of genocide against Israel in the International Court of Justice. And he has pushed for precedents and policies that will not just undermine Israel, but expose American officials to vulnerabilities as well. I have every confidence that President Trump will demand South African officials change their policies and will hold them accountable if they don't. And it's critically important for the American people to understand the bases for our policies. Please talk a little bit about the extent of South Africa's malign activities and how they are undermining American national security interests.
Well, it's one of the, first of all, we chose not to participate in this year's G20 hosted by South Africa, either at the foreign minister level or the president's level. And it had a lot to do with some of these issues, in addition to some of the issues they brought on their agenda, which we don't think reflect the priorities of this administration. So the president of South Africa is here today because he says he endeavors to reset relations between our countries. And President Trump, if someone says that, is always going to be open to resetting relations. But it will have to touch on some of the issues just pointed to now. Obviously, the position they've adopted towards Israel is way, not just off balance, but completely geared towards one side. And it makes one wonder about these allegations that are out there now of foreign influence, including with Iran. They clearly, on the global stage, and multiple multinational organizations have consistently been a vote against America's interests, time and again. Not one-off. You always understand when some country has to go in one direction opposite to you because, you know, that happens. That's what diplomacy is ultimately about. Diplomacy is also about when we're aligned, we work together. When we're unaligned, we have to talk. But when one country is consistently unaligned with the United States on issue after issue after issue after issue, now you have to make conclusions about it. So all I could say about the meeting today, I'm not there obviously because I'm here with all of you. In fact, it may be going on right now as we speak, or was scheduled to go on as we speak, is this was an outreach on the part of the South African president. He said he wanted to come to Washington. He wanted to reset relations with the United States. I have no reports as to how that meeting has gone so far. If there's a willingness on their side to reset relations, obviously something we'll explore, but we do so with eyes wide open to what they've done so far.
And how does their campaign against Israel undermine America?
Well, I think, first of all, because it echoes some of the charges that are being made by some of the biggest enemies of Israel that happen to be ours, whether it's Iran, whether it's these radical groups that chant death to America, death to Israel. So we're very concerned about that. I also think there's real concern in our mind about some of these international institutions that, frankly, South Africa has lined up strongly behind, who would seek to, if they could, jail, imprison, indict American office holders because of some of the positions we've taken on public policy, even though we're not members to the conventions that create these entities. So if you talk about these groups they are in essence utilizing their forum on the national stage as a nation state under this president and this leadership to echo the claims and the positions taken by not just Iran, but in many cases China as well.
Thank you.
Ted Cruz is absolutely right when he says Trump did more in 4 months than Biden did in 4 years. And let's not forget Brooke Rollins, the first Texan to be Secretary of Agriculture, boots on the ground in the Rio Grande Valley, actually listening to the farmers. That's what we call servant leadership, not elites sitting in D.C. writing checks for Ukraine while Texans can't water their crops. I don't know about you, But I want an America that puts our farmers, our workers, and our citizens first, not one that cowers to foreign governments breaking international law. Now let's pivot to South Africa. This is where things get even more dangerous. Senator Cruz sounded the alarm, and rightly so. South Africa, under President Ramaphosa, has basically become a puppet for the Chinese Communist Party and Iran. That's not speculation. That's backed up by their voting record, by their alignment with regimes that hate the United States and our ally, Israel. South Africa's government is siding with radical forces at the United Nations and the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide, while ignoring real genocidal regimes like Iran and Hamas. Let me be clear. That's not diplomacy, that's propaganda. And when they echo Iranian rhetoric, they're not just going after Israel, they're coming for U.S. next. Rubio nailed it. When a country like South Africa consistently opposes America at every turn at the UN, the G20, the ICC, you've got to stop pretending they're neutral. They're not. They've picked a side. And it ain't ours. And yet, we've got people in our own government who want to reset relations with these folks. Are you kidding me? You don't reset with nations that are cozying up to China and helping Iran target American allies. You call them out, you cut funding, and you show the world that America still has a spine. Rubio raised a bone-chilling point. South Africa is supporting international institutions that want to indict and imprison American officials for policies we enacted on our own soil. That's a direct attack on U.S. sovereignty. And the kicker? We're not even part of the treaties that govern those courts. They want to punish our people using globalist courts we didn't even sign on to. It's insanity and it's dangerous. This is why elections matter. This is why leadership matters. We don't need more weak-kneed diplomats apologizing for American strength. We need America First warriors like Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Brooke Rollins, and Donald J. Trump, who understand that the world is watching and they respect power, not platitudes. To every patriot watching, the fight for America's soul isn't coming. It's already here. Whether it's fighting for water in Texas, standing with Israel, or standing against the globalist mob that wants to jail American patriots, we've got to take a stand. Like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, speak up. These issues matter. They're not just headlines, they're about your family, your freedom, and your future. This isn't about being left or right. It's about being American. So ask yourself, are we going to keep bending to nations that hate us, or are we going to rise up and demand leaders who fight for U.S. again? Stay strong. Stay free, and God bless the United States of America. I'll see you in the next one.